Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Right.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ Envy, Angela Yee, Charlamagne the Guy. We are the Breakfast Club. We got some special guests joining us this morning. We have David John and Tamika Mallory.
What's up?
What's
y'all?
up,
morning.
Good morning.
morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
So what's happening? What y'all putting us on to this morning?
What are we putting us into this morning? David John looks at me. Well,
Let black women lead, as y'all
we've
always
been
do.
having conversations. You know, obviously I'm in the civil rights space and protesting and out here fighting. And David John's been calling my attention to a very serious crisis that's happening with black women, particularly, and that is HIV/AIDS. I think there's some stigmas around HIV and specifically around it being a gay disease that puts women in danger when we're not understanding that heterosexual women are also catching it. And by the way, we're the fastest growing population of those who actually have HIV. And so, you know, we're always trying to educate ourselves so that when we're in the movement, whatever work we're doing, we're also helping people to stay well so that they can fight, you know?
That's exactly right. As an unapologetic black feminist, it's really important for me that we do a better job of protecting and supporting black women and girls, cis and trans. And I appreciate y'all for making space for me to talk about the importance of HIV in our community. But one of the things that continues to come up in my work is that black women and girls are continuing to die as a result of us not even having this conversation.
Right.
And the biggest thing that's come up is that some of it is that we don't want to have conversations because black women don't want to blame black gay men, right? And this question has come up. Tamika and I talked about this earlier this week. And there's a stat that I want everybody to know, which is that in 2018, the last time that we have data from the CDC, heterosexual contact accounted for 92% of HIV diagnoses amongst black women.
Oh, wow.
So to be clear, yes, it is possible that straight, cis, hetero black women, I did a double redundancy, are having sex with men who also are having sex with men. But by sheer mathematical limitations, that's not the reason why these rates are as high as they are. And so my hope is that we can use this National Women and Girls HIV Awareness Day, which is March 10th, to talk about this and how it is that this virus is still killing black people in all of our forms, including black, cis, hetero women.
Why don't people treat HIV/AIDS the way they treat like the coronavirus? Like how you know they ring all the alarms for coronavirus and Ebola and Zika, whatever.
Yeah.
I feel like at first they did, right?
A long time
they
ago.
did. But I don't think people want to know they have it. Right? Because when I was reading over some of the material that David is sharing with us, I saw that, 1 in every 9 women have it. They don't even know they have it.
Yeah, 1 in every 9 people who are living with HIV don't know it.
Right.
Particularly for black women, 1 in every 7.
Right.
Right? So the rates
I'm
are
not
even
sure
higher.
they're getting because I hear people say, you know, all the time, I don't want to know.
And it's interesting. You posted it, and a couple of folks I did the thing I shouldn't do. I was in the comments because we're hosting a testing event, Juices for Life, in Brooklyn, March 6th, from 12 to 3, with a testing partner just been tested.
Let me read this post that I posted, and then
Lord,
we
go
can
for
discuss it. So I reposted what David wrote. Black women and girls are dying because y'all still believe the lie that HIV is a gay disease. And there were some people in the comments.
Right.
Let me find it, but you go ahead and say what you were about to say.
So a couple of people in particular said things like it's a death sentence and, they're far gone. There's nothing that we can do about it. And the point that I'm continuing to try and make is that it is not the death sentence that it once
somebody
was.
said free bad news day.
That's exactly right. Free bad news day. And that's exactly right.
That's what you've been taught, though. You know, as a kid, that's what you've been taught. When you have HIV or AIDS, you don't make it.
That's exactly right.
That's what you've been
And
taught.
that used to be the reality.
Right.
It was that
Right.
once you knew, it was a clock. It was that was expiring, almost like sandglass, and you were just waiting for the moment where you were going to die. That's just not the reality now. We are dying because people don't know, because they're not being tested, that they're not being connected to care, and they are otherwise not doing the things that we can do, including taking pills to reduce the likelihood of one becoming HIV positive. I take a pill. We've talked about it before as well, PrEP. You can also take a pill to reduce your viral load such that even if you are HIV positive, you cannot transmit it to other people through sex. It is also important for me to say that so much of these conversations about HIV are only about sex. There are people that are born with HIV that have it perinatally. There are people that get it because of needles, not necessarily using it intravenously because of blood transfusions. And so there are many ways that people get HIV. The important thing for us is to know it.
And that's the problem. I think a lot of times, as a kid, you grow up, the only 2 ways that you would always hear about HIV was gay, if you were gay, and needles, if you were using needles and you were doing drugs and you shared needles. And those are the only 2 ways. And the way they would...
I feel like that came later, though.
No.
I feel like when I first started hearing about it, you thought if you sleep with a bunch of women,
Yeah,
you
that's
get
what
it.
I thought first.
But then later on,
It shifted, and some of this is about how the media kept to tell the story.
At first, as a kid, especially in New York, it was always known as that they would say that if you were gay, you had to be careful because it was this disease going around called HIV and AIDS, and also drugs. That's why they were giving out so many free needles back in the day, because they didn't want people to share needles.
Yep.
And those were the two ways, and it feels like that's what the press was pushing.
Yeah.
And then it was Eazy-E.
and magic.
but that's
And
how
magic,
I,
right?
that's how I
And then that's
heard
how I got to
of
black
it.
people.
Yeah.
I heard of it as being a gay disease at first,
Yep.
you know, and I think that has a lot to do with black families too, and the myths that we tell ourselves and each other.
And Aunt Oprah, who gave a platform to a dude named J.O. King, who was selling a whole lot of books
I used to
and
love
getting
that
real
book,
booked
though.
and busy because he was talking about and blaming black men as a contagion vector for all
On
of
the
these
down
things.
low.
Right,
That's
right,
exactly
That
right.
was a good book, though. I ain't gonna lie.
Listen.
Yeah, but I mean,
It was entertaining as fuck.
Until it blamed black men, right? And we're still
Yeah.
dealing with the implications of that.
Right.
It's again why people don't want to have this
Yeah,
discussion.
people think
Right.
that down low men are the reason why black women are getting this disease.
That's
but
exactly
it is a
right.
factor also, right? Like
as are so many other
so
factors.
many other
Yes,
factors,
yes.
but it's not one that you can. And I think it's important for women to know. It's like just because you think your boo is whatever you think he is, you still need to protect yourself.
If you are having sex,
Right, period.
period.
With a woman, man, whoever it
you
is,
want, whatever,
right.
cis, trans, whatever, you should be thinking about what you can do to protect your holistic and sexual health and wellness.
But
And you
That's
know one
all
thing,
this is
another thing
about.
that people think too is that once you know you have it and start taking the medication, that's when you get sicker. People really believe that. Like they believe that, okay, I was fine until I went and found out I had this, but then once I found out, all of a sudden I started getting sick rapidly.
So it is true that the medicine can cause different side effects and introduce you to things that you otherwise hadn't experienced heretofore. But there are ways that you can adjust the meds, try different meds. There are different pharmaceutical companies that are producing different things now that you can find something that works for you.
But isn't some of it mental? Because I think that's like with everything. As soon as you know you have it, you're like, oh.
Dynamo.
That's why mad people
Call
don't.
it out.
Possibly.
That's why people don't go back for their results. Like back in the day when you used to
Possibly.
do the 2-week test.
Well, now you can get them if you come
Yeah,
on
if you-
Saturday.
if you
Jesus
come
for life
Saturday,
and get
it's swab,
tested.
But see, but I
Yeah, it's almost
understand people in
immediate.
those comments though, because I remember back in the day when I was a dumb teen, and if I thought I wouldn't want to know.
Right.
I just wouldn't want to. I felt like if I didn't know, it would go away.
Right.
And that's how
But
people.
it won't. We know that
I know,
now
I
that it
know.
won't, right? And so if the question is, this is one of those moments where like knowledge can
Right.
literally save your life, right? And to go back to where we started. Our community doesn't have this conversation in part because it is not a larger conversation that happens in the public, in part because it's not affecting white people anymore, right? When white people, white gay men in particular, were dying as a result of this, they were taking over government buildings. They created an organization that was led by, the work was done by women of color, black trans women, white women, but those who were putting their bodies on the line were white men because they had the privilege to. They could walk into the buildings in D.C. and lay down and not fear getting arrested or shot or any of the other things that we know
Right.
happen to
To us,
us when we put
right.
our bodies on the line.
Right.
They got money from the federal government to deal with this. They created centers and communities that people can go to. They got PrEP before it became a thing that we're now still trying to tell people to talk about. And so in many senses of the term, it's not an issue for them.
And I think people that have HIV or AIDS disease don't feel comfortable enough talking about it as much.
That's a fact.
Why would you?
But you know, I mean, you should. I mean, if you have it and you're living with it and you want to tell other people about it, that's part of the problem. That's why I say about everything is part of the
Easier
problem.
said than
Yeah,
done.
but
It
you know
is
what?
very
And
much
I'm going
so.
to tell you because I know someone who I'm very close to who the industry that he is in, he says he feels he will lose customers. Like people will stop allowing him to work with them physically if they know that he has it. So I mean, and he actually knows of someone who now knows, and they already told them don't come back.
I mean, it's lit.
Wow. So,
There are students now. I was at a school yesterday. There are Asian American kids
Right.
who
Let's
are
be
being
clear.
quarantined
Let's be
in
clear.
schools because people are fearful of coronavirus.
Just because
Let's
they're
be
Asian,
clear.
not because they
Asian
have
American.
it.
They've been to China, have no contact in any of
Right.
these spaces where we otherwise might be meaningfully concerned. But again, I'm highlighting that there are ways that hysteria and misinformation make people do crazy things.
I saw them attacking somebody on the train. Did you see
Yeah,
that
I saw
video?
that
They were
live.
attacking an
Yeah,
Asian man.
several times.
They were
Yeah.
It's been happening.
Attacking
Why?
an Asian man on the train just because of coronavirus.
Why
no
would they
reason.
attack him if they
Yeah,
thought
why
he
would
had
you
it?
attack somebody who got coronavirus?
I mean, first
He was
of all,
spraying
because
Febreze
many
on
of the
him.
people on the train are not mentally stable. Let's get that straight. So the man is telling the person, get up, get away from me. I don't want you to sit here. Just something, he wasn't in his right mind. already, and then you tell him that Asian people have coronavirus, and then there it goes.
Got you.
So he's just mentally unstable.
And we live in a world still where most people only know Magic Johnson as a black person living with HIV. That announcement was made when I was a teenager.
94.
Again, by sheer mathematical limitations, that cannot be possible that he is the only celebrity we know who is living with HIV. But I highlight again, we have not done the work to create space for people to want to say, I'm living with HIV.
Right.
Yeah, because even growing up, I only remember one person I knew who had HIV. And it's not like she told people. I think it's just something somebody said, but I only knew one person. There had to be more people.
Only knew
right?
two. I knew Magic Johnson and my uncle, who passed away, who was a drug user. But those are the only two people that we never really discussed it or talked about it.
Yeah, you don't talk about it.
But that was, those were the only two people that I ever knew.
It's an uncomfortable conversation. Even right now, I'm uncomfortable, and I've been clean for 4 years.
Be comfortable. I've been clean for 4 years.
I'm serious.
But you know what?
Yeah, that's fine. But it's more uncomfortable for you to know this, to have this information, to have the ability to do something about it, and then not do it.
Yeah. Well, what were you going to say?
Oh, no, I was going to say earlier today we had this topic. We were talking about the show Love is Blind. I don't know
Yeah,
if
of course. Let's talk about it.
And Carlton.
Yes.
And Diamond.
A hot ass mess.
Right. So
that's the people he called to all kinds of bees and
Yeah.
all
He
stuff.
called her just one, but it was one too many. But yes.
right. And so apparently he did not tell her before they got engaged. And the whole point of the show is, for people who don't watch, is that you talk through a wall. You don't meet each other in person, but you have conversations. You don't see each other. And then you propose to who you like. It's like a speed dating type of thing through a wall. And so he meets Diamond, he proposes to her, they get engaged, and then he waits till they're on their pre-honeymoon to let her know that he did used to
He's fluid. He's
sleep
sexually
with,
fluid.
Yeah, men
Sexually
previously
fluid,
with men, and he's attracted to hearts.
Right.
But he waited until they were engaged
Right.
to give her that information. Is that something that's necessary to share with somebody?
Oh, I did a post about this on Instagram. Demetri Lucas and I had a discussion,
I love
and
Demetri.
both have been going back and forth about this. And there are a couple of things that I tried to work through. One is that it's complicated, especially for black women, right? The thing that Demetri was responding to was his idea that if a black woman says, I'm not interested in dating a man who has been sexually fluid or who has experience being with anyone other than women, cis or trans, I'm not interested. Is that phobic? Is that biphobic? And the answer is ish, right? Like if you discriminate against and penalize or otherwise talk bad about bi folks, maybe, but you can have a preference. We all have preferences, right? The thing that was most difficult for me is that Carlton seemed disingenuous throughout the entire process, right? You have to watch it. I want you to watch it so we can talk about it.
I'm all like,
When they are sitting having this discussion, you can tell that he's working through how difficult this is. And what I continue to say is that disclosure is difficult. So many people are simply saying he should have said it from their first conversation. And what I say is like, imagine again, let's go back to where we started. If you have HIV, it can change the way that somebody responds to you. But if you develop a relationship with somebody, how they respond might be a little bit different. So it makes sense to me that Carlton wanted to get to the point of seeing her, to be able to say to her while looking her in the face, this is my experience and I want you to continue to see me as you saw me before you had this information.
But it's not homophobic if she doesn't want to date him because
Biphobic.
of that.
It's not.
And a
What
lot of
she's
people
saying
say
is,
it's homophobic
no,
because
it's not
that's
at all.
her choice.
And this is why the conversations are important to have. What Diamond said in that space was, give me the information, allow me to make the decision.
Correct.
And the beautiful thing for me, there was so many missed opportunities. I wanted to just call a timeout and give them some coaching. When they're sitting by the pool in this pre-honeymoon moment, he's like breaking. He knows that if he says this to her, it could shift her because he's had this experience before. And he says, as you said, right, like, I'm attracted to people. Because Diamond's like, well, I can't compete with a dude. Are you sure that you want to be with me? A very valid question for anybody, regardless of orientation.
Women already got to worry about other women. Now you got to worry about men too.
But we all have to worry about everybody, right? Like, we come back to that. But what Carlton says is, I'm attracted to people, right? It's about what goes on in here, but not what somebody looks like or not what their genitalia is.
He's attracted to hearts.
To hearts.
That should sound like game too, though.
Yeah.
I'm attracted to
But
hearts.
there are people for
because
whom it's true, right?
Yeah.
Like there's another woman on the show, Team Lauren, who falls in love with a white man.
Right.
First white man she dated.
Cameron.
And I'm all about their relationship.
love that couple.
Right? We love that couple.
They were the first ones to
and
get
she's real
engaged.
pro-black. There's also an interesting thing when she
That's
talks
the
about
first
her
white guy.
father, right? Her father, like, not accepting this because he supports the black family, even though he's divorced. Whole nother issue. My big challenge with Carlton is that when Diamond said, help me make sense of this, he was not willing to do it.
Right.
Maybe he couldn't make sense of it himself.
Yeah.
Though.
Then
Maybe
don't
he
invite
couldn't.
somebody else into the space of, again, thinking about building a life with you when you can't have that conversation with them.
True.
You got to build the muscle. He was also like putting out a lot of toxic
was
masculinity
very
and shit similar to Daddy
aggressive.
Helen.
Though. I mean, I want you to be honest with me. I don't even want to go down a road in a situation where I get my heart in something and it's not something that I ultimately want.
But you want to know first date?
That's a big first date.
Okay,
that's a big first date icebreaker to me.
Maybe, and I didn't see the show, but I'm just thinking of experiences that I know of, friends who have gotten really
how
far.
Soon? Like how soon do you?
I
Because
mean,
this becomes the question,
when
right?
It gets
like
to the point,
you ain't tell me soon enough.
But you know when it's getting a little bit, when we're getting a little closer, we're talking more often.
Let's be honest. If a guy came to you was dating before, he said, "Hey, Tamika, I want to tell you something. You know, I love hearts.
I'm in love with men's hearts."
Yeah.
now, how do you feel now? Now, what do you say? Do you say, okay, well, it's cool, or do you say,
well,
nah,
I mean, I don't know, because I don't know. I don't think I want you to tell me that too late in the game, because I do want to make a decision. It's a lot of things I don't want to know. I don't want to find out you have 2 kids.
But if it's too early in the game, you might not be in it enough where it'd be like, you know what, I'm out. It's just too early in the game.
And I think it's also hard to judge how you might react if it hasn't happened to you.
Right.
You know, because we might say, I don't want that, but then you might be in a situation where you meet the perfect person.
Yeah, I'm not saying
Or you
whether
might
I
have
want it or
been,
not.
right?
I'm saying that there are people who tell you they have children later, or they have herpes later,
or a wife,
or they have a wife.
Herpes later is a little. I mean,
but I'm just saying, like, don't tell me later something, because at this point, if I don't want to do it now, I'm conflicted, and I have to go through all of these all of these feelings, and you pretty much put me in this situation. That's the way that I feel about it. But I also understand that disclosure is difficult. It's very difficult.
It looks different for all. So what I think about is that, like, the question is, how do you rank these things, right? It's like, do you need to know more about my bad credit, or like the mental health in my family? I had herpes in high school. Like, there's so many things that
we need a checklist.
Right.
Like, do I need to know you have do I need to know you have a small penis before we get there?
Right.
Exactly.
We got to figure this out. So some of this is about us just creating space to have uncomfortable conversations, which is why we got to do this.
You got a small penis? You're not telling a woman
it's all right, because she gonna tell her. Somebody gonna tell her.
And then she gonna tell somebody else.
Somebody gonna tell somebody.
You let us get to this point.
That's not true. I put that under the umbrella of, do you even have to tell a person all your past sexual partners, though?
But this goes, if one is a man, then it sounds like yes, right? Like, all of this stuff is really complicated, and I just want more people to be comfortable talking about all of this stuff.
Well, it's complicated.
That's the goal for me.
Now, HIV testing is today.
HIV testing at Juices for Life.
Saturday.
277
277 Malcolm X Boulevard in Brooklyn.
March 7th.
March 7th.
Wait, so I went to the juice bar.
Oh, it is the 7th.
My little plug is I went to the juice bar. This is a whole, like, fabulous corporate experience.
I brought Tamika to the juice bar.
It was dope. Like, I was feeling all good. I need to go back to Juices for Life. No, it's really amazing.
Yeah, thank you. I love that space.
Chandeliers in the bathroom. She did.
The dopest thing for me is that
the bathroom is so fly.
It is.
I was in the bathroom like,
we got a chandelier in the bathroom.
But we've done. This will be the 3rd testing event. I'm thankful for you making space. We're also working to host a monthly testing happy hour at the location in the Bronx. But twice, the last 2 times that we've hosted testing events, I've had people say to me, we need this in this community.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it feels good to have people see us.
Are you there yourself personally?
Yeah.
When people find out if they do have it, are you
I'm there, yeah.
But it is confidential information.
Confidential, so
I'm not going to know.
I think you'll be a great person to talk to them.
Yeah. We have
there's a person in particular who tested positive the last time two times ago. The last time there were no positive tests. And I was there. It is, but it's also good for me when they're positive tests, because we know that we can connect people to care.
Right.
Like, it is always good for people to be there.
The person that found out, did he have an idea, or she have an idea?
No, they did not. But they and it was challenging for them, right? They cried. We cried together. They asked if I would go with them to their doctor's visits the following week, and we did. And now they are in care. We talk every week to make sure that they're taking their medicine. And my biggest goal was making sure that they had a culturally competent mental health provider.
You know why David's so dope? He switched it. You said he or her. He said they, them. He never revealed what the gender was. I ain't that smart.
I'm getting there. Those gender pronouns.
Listen, pronouns. There's pronouns cause a lot of controversy, and I tell Black folks or people of color a lot. Like, what matters most is that you respect people and how they want to be referred to.
If you say my daughter, if Dwayne Wade is saying this is my daughter,
right,
and she's referring to herself as a girl,
right,
then I will refer to you.
It's disrespectful as hell to say he. Period.
Yeah.
In that context, I did a piece that I'm excited will be published by BET about why we as a community need to protect and defend the entire Wade family.
Yeah, people were very mad at me because I kept saying his daughter. That's not a girl. Blah blah. I'm like, if Dwayne Wade, Gabrielle, if they're saying my daughter, if she's saying I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Don't you got to give us space to catch up too?
Very much so, but that's why I said that's why it's about not being disrespectful.
Because it's hard. Like, I mean, David, like the gender pronouns thing, sometimes, especially when you're looking at someone and they present in one way and you're trying to remember, and you know me, I'm a baby sweetheart, darling, you know, girl, sugar, and then I feel bad because I've messed up. And so I just hope that, I'm so glad I got this platform. There's millions of people listening. Everyone is not trying to be disrespectful. Some people are really literally making a mistake. And I think if you touch them nicely or tell them, hey, you know, no, they'll get it. But sometimes people be getting real mad at you.
But think about it. Sometimes it's almost like us as black people or you as a woman having to be in a space where every day somebody's asking you the same thing or forcing you to show up and speak the same language.
Yeah.
And you could have just met them when they were triggered. I find often that if you meet people with grace and you fuck up, they give you grace.
Right.
But when you're being intentionally disrespectful, which I've seen grown people do to Zaya, and it makes me want to punch them in their throats, then it's slightly different, right? And the other thing that has been really important for me was this came up. I was talking to a pastor who's in Georgia, whose daughter is trans, and we're talking about trying to make space for this. And this goes back to a conversation we've had in this space before. I had to help her appreciate that her daughter was born a girl. The doctor made an assignment of male at birth. And again, this is about us not having enough of these conversations to know that it's beyond an XX chromosome equals girl, XY chromosome equals boy. There are many different maturations that we should make space for. And we just need to talk about it.
No, we have to talk about it. This is I have knocked down, drag out wars with family members about this whole issue of, 3-year-olds not necessarily knowing, but their parents being able to identify that something about this child is very different from the other boy who's in my house. There's a male child here and there's another male. I have two, and one of them is very different. And people cannot accept it. It's very difficult. And we've been having some serious conversations. But what I realize is that there are not enough safe spaces for people to just be ignorant and ask questions without being judged. So we have to create those spaces.
Because you're teaching.
That's exactly right. Which is why we have to protect Zaya, right? Like Dwayne Wade and Gabby have both said that we are watching this baby lead. And I think as a community, we have to protect that baby because she will continue to be attacked as she creates space for us to have this conversation and more people to be comfortable with the reality that trans folks have always existed, even if we didn't have the language, even if it wasn't in vogue to use the pronouns, right? It's about shifting so that it's not as uncomfortable at some point.
Well, give them the information again about tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yes, the 7th, March 7th. I appreciate that.
I'll be there also.
Yes.
We're there from 12 to 3.
Yes.
Doing these tests.
But you said you will not know anyone's status.
I'm not there. No one tells me anything.
No one knows anything.
I'm on my business.
It is all confidential.
I just want to make sure you come and get tested. I get tested every single time we do it also, right?
Yep.
And David gets tested. So will you be there too?
I will not be there.
Okay, you won't, but
I will
she's
be
traveling.
in Mexico.
Okay.
Corona. Little vacation?
I will be,
Corona.
no, Yandy Smith Harris, my lovely sister, she's now, this is her first annual girls trip, empowerment trip. So I'll be there with Monique Itlet and a bunch of other amazing women.
So they can download our toolkit, nbjc.org, this Words Matters toolkit that I brought you all that has information, some language, some resources. If you are not in the tri-state area, if you go to our website, nbjc.org, and you put in your zip code, you can find a free testing center in your community. You can also, if you need to be connected to CARE, find those resources. The other thing that we haven't talked about, but that's connected to this, is that we have a gender justice toolkit that's more about the social justice piece of this.
Okay, here's a pronoun chart.
Yep.
too.
Yep. Again, and you can go back to it and refer to it, but again, the important thing is just to meet people with respect. Tamika and I have a sister named Chiquisha Clemens, who some of y'all know experienced the beginning stages of rape at an Awful House restaurant in Alabama. 2 police officers ripped off her clothes, forced her to the ground, and she has since then been engaged in a protracted legal negotiation with the company.
Them niggas still eating in Waffle House now.
And that is the thing that we struggle with. Tamika, Brittany, Packnet, Kamika Shelby, I'm thinking about Nigel Shelby, Chakisha Clemens and I talk about is how difficult it is for us every time we see somebody on the gram at Waffle House restaurant, hashtagging it and posting it. One, the food is disgusting.
Right.
Most people know somebody that can do a
clear.
better job of cooking that basic ass food. And there are there are receipts for them not caring about black people, and I just don't understand why we're patronizing black
including
employees.
Black employees, because that's been the other piece. And Killer Mike and I had this debate at the Revolt conference. Like, what about the employees? How can we boycott a restaurant knowing that some people need jobs? Well, the employees are coming to us also saying they're being paid, less than minimum wage. They're being treated terribly. There was a video of one black couple at a Waffle House, where a white man came into the restaurant, they were working. The black couple was working. He came in, got into it with them about something, and jumped over the counter. And they still, literally, Waffle House protected the white man.
Wow.
Over the employees. So, like, the place is trash, period, from the beginning to the end. But we, as people of color, sometimes we just have been so conditioned. We've been doing something the same way for so long that we just go robotically and continue to support things that's literally killing our people. We have got to stop that. It's okay not to go to the Waffle House. Like, literally, it's cool.
Yeah. All right, until they make some changes.
Right. And then when it happens to you, you all like, oh, everyone needs to rally around me and wait. And people come on my
then
page.
You acting like Terry Crews.
People come on my page and tell me, get down to so-and-so right now. They don't donate $1. They don't, they're not really interested. Don't show up. But they tell you, just get there and deal with the problem. Like, yo, my people.
All right, you got to fund your superheroes.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Black women.
Tamika's a superhero.
Well, thank you guys for joining us.
I appreciate you.
Love y'all so much,
Appreciate y'all.
man.
Thank
See
you
you
for making
tomorrow,
space for us.
Saturday at Juices for Life, 12 to 3. And it's The Breakfast Club. Good morning.